Hello again. So I had to adjust the incoming firewall from my Comcast home router to allow access from the VM that I have on VMware ESXi 6.7. So let's take a quick look at ESXi 6.7 and what we have running that's running Jenkins and running the build machine. So now I'm logging into ESXi 6.7 and let's take a look at what's running in here. So we have one machine running here that is running Jenkins, and that's called this machine here. It's running Jenkins. So this machine basically has an IP of 192.168.1.220. Let's take a look at that. So you can see the IP address on this thing is an internal IP address I have here at home. And I can't seem to highlight it, but you can see here in the middle of the screen it's 192.168.1.220. So you want to basically set Comcast to give port 8080 because I'm running Jenkins on port 8080. So this DNS name here really just points to 192.168.1.220 inside the house here. What matters is it's running on port 8080. So inside Comcast here on our home router, we can do port forwarding. And this is kind of a hassle because the name of the machine doesn't really come up. When you do an add port forward on Comcast, it's kind of irritating because if you're using a static IP address, Comcast DNS doesn't know about it. So say I wanted to add some port, some random port like 8888, you might go here to device, and what you'll see is all our devices in here. But for VMware machines, you just get this, so you don't know which one it is. I know I have two of them, and so I picked the first one and it worked. So let's review how that looks. And here is my Jenkins machine, and we'll show the port forwards. And I'm forwarding port 8080 TCP UDP to this internal machine. So that takes care of port 8080 and getting to the Jenkins server from GitHub on the outside. That's all done. So we have a NAT system here, and we've poked a hole in the firewall for port 8080, and it'll refer all 8080s to this machine here. Doesn't matter what the application is, but anything on 8080 will go here to an API, REST API. So that takes care of the Comcast part. Now, for this build, there's a few things I had to do. You want to really take a look at the settings here for Get. Okay, so let's go through this, and it's still a little foggy sometimes. Here's the webhook. So yeah, here's the webhook. And for this webhook, I put in sjjeffreyfull.com. Now SJ basically is the address of my Comcast port or Comcast router on the outside. So basically, if I was to bring up a web page and say, what is my IP? You'll see my IP, and let's do that now. Um, what is my IP? And here we can say, okay, what is my IP? We go to one of these things here. And San Jose, yeah. Okay, so here's the IP basically right here of my external home router. And if you copy that and you check the DNS listing, which you want to do that too. Um, so here's the IP address that I got basically from what is my IP. And we say ping SJ. This better match. It does match. So that means we're well and good and we're clear to start using this thing as a webhook. Okay, so to do that, you want to make sure this is right. We verify this is the right IP address. We know we have Jenkins running on port 8080. And what's important is putting this GitHub webhook. So you want to get this um, URL in here. And so this REST API. So how do we know this REST API is valid and what it wants? Well, you can search for that in Jenkins, but let's assume it for now that this is all good and well to go. And I left this thing as a form unencoded, no secrets, just, okay, so when I do a push, meaning that here in this repository, I do a push to this thing that will trigger the build from this repository. And this repository here matches what I have um, on GitHub. So that's well and good. Let's make sure we got everything figured out here. I didn't use any deploy keys, I don't think. Yeah, I do have one in here. I do have one deploy key in here for doing a push to this thing. Never used. Actions, allow actions, okay. So I think that's really all we need. There was some global thing in here I had to fix, I think. Let's see. I think there was something globally in here I had to fix too. But as long as you get the project right and the webhook, I think this is all you need to do. So that's it for the GitHub side. Okay, on the Jenkins side, you pretty much got to receive this thing. So here's my build Tomcat job, and so you can jump into this job here. And now you want to do some status changes on it, some configure here. Whoops, don't want to do that, my gosh. Do a configure, and let's take a look at source code management. So under source code, you want to put in the same repository as you have for your GitHub, and that's pretty much this one here. So you want to make sure that this pretty much matches, which it does. And so I have a Jenkins key in here, which is also defined in the GitHub. And there's one more. Okay, yeah, and then you want to make sure that you have this selected here. And you also got to have the correct, and that's my build command. You also want to have the correct plugins. So let's quickly go back to dashboard, leave this page, and we'll go back to the dashboard. We'll say manage Jenkins, manage plugins, and what's installed here. So you want to have the correct plugin in here for Git. And let's just do a scan through these. And let's see where it is, GitHub. So I took this install at the beginning when I was installing Jenkins. I took a bunch of these, but you want this Git plugin here to be in here. This is the one you need really. The Git plugin or GitHub plugin. So you want the GitHub plugin. It's very simple. And you can verify that by clicking on the Git plugin right here on the blue part. And you'll see that yes, this is the one you want. And this will give you instructions on how to run that plugin. And what really matters is just about down here. So they tell you pretty much here how to do this and down here. And that's about it. So I use this manual mode here. It seemed easier for the moment. And what it tells you is, yes, you want to use this GitHub webhook, and this wants to point back to your server. So as long as I had my correct port on here, it would go. So that's about it to make it work. And I'm not using a token yet. I'm just using a manual REST URL back into my server. So let's test it out and make this go. That's the most exciting part, right? Back to dashboard. Let's look at our build here again, build Tomcat. And now you can see we've kicked off a few builds here. So this build will now kick off in a CI/CD event when the source code's changed. So here I'm looking at my source code. Here's the repository that I've cloned down to my iMac on Mac OS. And I've been just kind of mucking around this file here. So if I do a git status, nothing has changed, we're all clean. Let's just simply muck around this file here to make something different. And anything we add here is going to change it. So just add some strings in here. And probably for doing this professionally, you'd want to put a branch in here and just trigger on a branch being done. So I'm just triggering on any pushes at all the repository right now. That's good enough for this demo, but I think in the future we'll do it on real branches. Okay, git status. This is more like a hello world to make sure it works. So we modified that file. Let's add it back in. Git commit and say added a 444 to new file. And so now if we save this thing, okay, so now if we do a push, it's going to change this around and it's going to call us to build the trigger. So let's do a git push. Let's push everything that's different. And once we push, you'll see a build signal to our Jenkins here from our GitHub project. Do that. And it looks like it did it. And this will get picked up down here. So now we see we got a build starting pending, quiet period, build number 8. And it looks like it finished up. So that basically triggered on our Jenkins down here at home. And so, yeah, it picked up the change we put in get. There's a new string. And a push did it. And so let's see what happened to this build. Details, details, details. Console output. So this build is very simple. It just pulls down the source code and it runs it, and it just does basically a MVM MVM project, I think, and this thing builds, or an MVM deployment or something. So let's take a look again how it builds. Back to project, configure. Okay, it does an MVM package and it builds it. So in the future, you might want to put more complex builds. So now that this is done, we really want to then chain to a test scenario. So since the application is built, I want to now deploy this thing to a test scenario. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to put in our dashboard. We're going to put in a test Tomcat. So that might be called test Tomcat staging test. And we could put that in and start to work on that. So next video, we're going to put in the test phase and start testing this build. Thanks for watching and have a great day.